Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a LEED Fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast, where once a week I get to interview a green building professional somewhere in the world. And today, coming to us from the Bay Area, we've got Lauren Sparandara with us. She's with Ruse within Google. I can't wait to unpack her green building career. Lauren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Charlie. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real honor. You've had some amazing guests on this podcast, so thanks so much for thinking of me and including me in this as well.
Really awesome interview list, and you deserve to be on here too. I know LEED Fellow last year, and we'll talk about that. So Lauren, just take us back though. Give us that origin story. So where'd you grow up and go to school?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. So I grew up in the Bay Area. So I live in the Bay Area now. Bay Area born and raised, born technically in Berkeley in a hospital there, but grew up in San Francisco, moved to Palo Alto when I was about 7, and still live here now. And I can speak to that in a minute. But back in the home I grew up in and working for Google now, right near where I grew up, which is super cool. But yes, I went to school in St. Louis, though. I went to Washington University, studied architecture. Originally was pre-med. My dad's a doctor, so I was, sort of following in his footsteps, but then switched to architecture and really was focused on, got really interested in sort of what was being studied in that program, and then also in sustainability. So, got into I started a cross-disciplinary club for green building at Washington University for undergrad, and just learned a lot about the field and just really leaned into it. So that's for undergrad. And then was a designer within the architecture field, a consultant for many, many years. Worked for what was KEMA and now is DNV GL as a consultant, a green building lead consultant, and loved that so much early in my career. Got to work on everything from lead fire stations to the UCSF Medical Center in San Francisco, where my first son was born, which was really fun to have my son born in the building I had worked on for LEED certification. But yeah, and then I went to Yale for graduate school and studied master's in environmental management in the forestry. What was the forestry school there? And just learned a ton more about our supply chains, our global supply chains. And then I've been working at Google now for, 8.5 years on all sustainability for real estate, but have worn a number of different kind of hats, from looking at our existing building real estate to our new development projects to now managing sustainability for our Bay Area portfolio, amongst many others in the Bay Area that are partnering with me on that effort. So
yeah, thanks for showing us that time on it. What a good variety of projects there. I love it in the fire station and the hospital where you're first born, and then so you were getting all this green building experience, and then you decided to go back for that master's. So what nudged you towards that? Great,
yeah. So part of it was I'd gotten really good at sort of lead consulting. I still love it. I love lead, and I got really focused on, just the ins and outs of that. And so, but it was a point in my career where I wanted to keep expanding my knowledge, keep learning. And the program I did was a mid-career master's, which was fabulous for me in the sense that I actually worked still while I was in the program. I remember every Friday I would kind of clock in and do and work on lead consulting, which was very lovely, actually, to sort of take that and have that centering aspect to my graduate degree. But so it was very multidisciplinary. So I took classes in the law school, the business school, and it was just a chance to say, what's next for my career? Because I had been in the field for a while at that point, and I was ready to sort of figure out what to do next. I had sort of envisioned that I might pivot my career some. And so again, I studied more issues sort of around our electronic supply chain. But, ultimately I came back to green building, which was great, but I'm able to take a lot of the learnings there that are sort of associated with supply chain issues, which come up all the time for our building efforts, and just sort of take my career to the next level there. So yeah, it was that was sort of the impetus behind that.
Oh, I love it. Did you have like an aha moment to say, hey, my career is going to be all about green buildings, or was it just stacking along the way? It sounds like the architecture and then exposure to lead and consulting, and then you went and got the master's. Like, was there any other influence there? Just always been eco-friendly, or was there an aha moment along the way?
Yeah, I love this question. So I grew up around nature in a sense. I mean, in my backyard, always spent time just exploring what was, just the ins and outs of the bugs and the trees, and barefoot in the yard kind of thing out here. Very basic kind of childhood in that sense. I try to recreate that for my own kids as much as possible, the simplicity, at least how I remember it in the 80s. And I also was very lucky to grow up actually going to a summer camp in Yosemite. So I'd say that was sort of, and then ultimately I was a counselor there and such, but that was a very defining component to my life, because there's something about the beauty of nature at that level. It was just close, just outside of Yosemite National Park, and we would take backpacking trips with kids into the park, and it's spiritual, actually. It's sort of this thing where you're like, well, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to figure out how to capture that and bring more people into that world of protecting this and loving this and figuring out how to incorporate this into my life and my career,
And you've done that, and you continue to do that. And I love, as a parent, I've got 3 boys. Sounds like you have 2 boys. And it's just like, how can we, teach them this along the way. So on a recent trip to the West Coast, we were taking what we call in our company plackies. It's a selfie in front of a LEED plaque. And so I didn't know the Space Needle in Seattle, LEED gold there. I didn't know that. And Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank, LEED platinum. And so we've kind of started to do that a little bit on our journeys. So how about mentors or anyone that maybe opened a door along the way? If you look back, anyone to give a shout out to?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to shout out to my mom, which is perhaps cheesy a little, but I want to. And she so early in my career, she was also working. She was actually bringing in speakers into her job. She was working at SRI International, and she out here in Palo Alto, and she had folks like William McDonough and Amory Lovins come and speak. And so she shared with me, this was back in 2000, let's say. She shared with me Hanover principles. And I remember, I still have the original book. It's a small book. I don't know if you see it. It's actually, it's like it's Hanover principles. So it's fairly compact, right? But I had underlined it, highlighted, noted everything around it. It was just like, this aha moment for sure for me, that this was a whole world that existed around sustainability and buildings. And so my mom introduced me to that world, Amory Lovins, of course, too. And I said, oh my goodness, okay, there's a way perhaps I can marry this field of architecture that I'm moving into or studying at this time, and this visionary approach to thinking about buildings. And so that's for my mentor for sure. Initially is my mom. She is retired now, but was a real estate attorney. So just her career, her life, the curiosity, she'd always sort of foster that within me, which I incredibly appreciate. And then it's like, in terms of the LEED Fellow, Charlie, I was thinking there's just so many individuals over time, and particularly women, which was really interesting because I didn't sort of set out in my approach to say, okay, let me think of all the women. It just happened to be that there are so many women that have taken a chance with me, that have believed in me. And from Andrea Traber, she's now at Integral Group, but she played such a pivotal role early in my career when I started working at Kima. and as a mentor. And then, of course, Mary Davich, who has been on this podcast. She and I connected originally over Twitter. And we were connected and friends sort of through Twitter for a while before we had even met each other in person. And then I would answer questions. She'd answer my questions. I'd answer her questions about things like Energy Star appliances or, lead questions and such. And I think we met officially at a Living Future event. And it was just like, wow, here we are together, And then, more recently, Lynn Simon has been a mentor for me within Google, and Kate Randolph, and then Amanda Kaminsky for circularity efforts. And so I could go on and on, but I feel so lucky, really, truly, to have had these women that I've been able to learn from in terms of their poise and knowledge, and
wow,
just extend such immense gratitude to them.
Yeah, I can tell you're very grateful. And it really started with your mom there. I think that's amazing, and what she set up, and look at all this positive influence. So thank you. I'm big on mentors, or just someone that you look up to, and just maybe doesn't even open a door, but it's someone you look up to, and they can have some influence on you. Absolutely. So as we look back, what are some of your proudest accomplishments?
Yeah. Well, I would start with my two boys. So yeah, as you mentioned, I have a 6.5-year-old boy who graduates from kindergarten today, which blows my mind, and a 2.5-year-old boy. So I'm proud of them, of course, and I'm proud to be a working mom that's doing, continuing to work with two young children, and proud to continue to think about sustainability with them, sharing what I know. And yesterday we were at the Marine Science Institute for a field trip with my older son, and he's so knowledgeable about, I was so proud about like plastic waste issues in the ocean and everything. And I was like, okay, and he's super interested in our construction projects that I'm working on. So super proud of him. And then I think, there are, I keep taking on these big challenges at Google. The beauty of working at a place like Google is that you're often given these opportunities, which can be daunting at times for sure. But, there's in particular the last, let's say 6.5 years, I've been working on these two large development projects for Google, and just taking on basically the hardest challenges you could fathom with regard to LEED Platinum for both, and Living Building Challenge for both. And wow. And I'm proud that I've not given up. That's one of, I've sort of like said, okay, let's do this. There's definitely moments when I think all of us were like, I don't know if we can, but here we are, where the projects are opening now. And cool. It's just really, I'm proud of that. Yeah, I'm proud that we've made it this far, and we're still learning as we go, but I'm proud of that.
It's hard work too. Jeez. Yeah. And again, LEED Fellow, class 2021. And so I just think, there's 200,000 LEED professionals in the world. And Lauren, you're part of only about 330 people there. So what has that meant to you?
It's meant so much, honestly. And as I looked back on my career as part of the process of the application, I was reflecting on how it's been many years, for my career, and how LEED really opened up so many doors for me. I mean, so again, starting like at Washington University, I remember I found the first like LEED AP I could find in the world, and it was in St. Louis, to come speak, and he spoke, and it was wonderful, and it was inspiring. This was again like 20 years ago or something, and then as a young person, LEED gave me opportunities to present, to speak, to bring people together at the early architecture firms I was part of. It was like I organized a LEED training, and it's amazing what that has done. But it's just been many years, and so it's a huge honor. Like the folks that are on that list as LEED fellows are my heroes in life. And so the fact that I'm on that list I have to kind of pinch myself to believe it, to be honest. But it is, it's a wonderful thing. And so the goal now is to share, and to bring more people along on our journey.
Share and teach, mentor, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of that too. So fast forward to kind of present day. You mentioned a couple of really big, long, multi-year projects that maybe are finishing up. But, what else is keeping you busy today?
Yeah. a couple things for sure. So these projects, again, so Charleston East and Bayview specifically. So Charleston East is 600,000 square feet, Bayview 1.1 million square feet. And again, I've been working on them since my first son was born. That's how I kind of mark it. So it's like over 6.5 years. But Bayview just opened up officially. So we've been doing lots of tours and bringing more people into the buildings, everyone from government officials to internal teams, leadership, et cetera. So that's been really exciting. And then Charleston East is still under construction. So working to help, I see every day as an opportunity to increase our construction waste, recycling, to innovate, as we work through the project. So I'm still very, very busy on those two particular projects, but also within my role. So my role is as Bay Area Sustainability Partner within the RUSE team at Google is to kind of bring people together across different parts of the organization to de-silo as much as possible, to unite work streams. So I help manage that effort. So every quarter we convene what we call a cohort, the Bay Area Cross-Functional Sustainability Cohort. We have cohorts similar in other regions in the world. And that's been really fun to focus on too, and just kind of bringing people together, figuring out key initiatives we want to work on. And so certainly that's another key aspect of my work that's keeping me busy.
Can you give us a peek towards, are there certain minimum sustainability or healthy building goals? I know Google leased 6 floors at one market. One of my clients lead EV Platinum buildings, and there was a nudge there to, if you're going to lease space versus maybe you build it or renovate it, is there almost like an internal minimum set of best practices you do on every project, and then certain projects will get official certifications and plaques? How do you decide that on projects?
Yeah. Well, as I'm sure you can appreciate, because our portfolio is so varied, just as you started to allude to and hit on. So we have smaller tenant improvement projects to the larger ground up construction projects that I was talking about, in a second ago, like Bayview, that's over 1 million square feet. So it depends. We do have a sustainability workplace standard for all of our tenant improvement projects globally. So that helps to hit on what you're asking about, which is across energy, water, waste, health, et cetera. Sort of here are the minimum requirements. And then here are some leadership aspects that we encourage you to hit as well. For our larger ground up construction projects, we have a LEED Platinum requirement for the Bay Area for those projects. And so that's just a given at this point. Yeah. So, and then things like Living Building Challenge are kind of addressed as we go, sort of in terms of the opportunity and the moment. So, yeah.
Project to project, very diverse portfolio. And then on the workplace side, you mentioned the word circularity. So to the lay person listening right now and hearing about circular economy or circularity, how does that start to show up in your facilities?
Yeah, this is something I'm particularly passionate about as well. So circularity is important. So basically keeping materials in use. So it's in a way, it's kind of a similar thing for reduce, reuse, recycle. And importantly, starting with reduce. But what I've been focused particularly on within Google is the reuse component. So salvaging materials, because we have so much real estate and so much change that's happening at Google. We have folks moving from one building to another building. We have different business needs that are constantly redefining, how we lay out our spaces and how we move forward. And through that effort, working to ensure that we reuse any asset that we can, either within our existing portfolio or we donate it for reuse in a more external marketplace, hopefully locally if possible. And so I've been on a personal passion kind of kick there on trying to ensure we reuse those things, which is it's easier said than done at times, right? Because you have just the sheer quantity of materials and sort of the logistics aspects of how you manage that. But that's the key thing. And then healthy materials is a key part of circularity too, because you want to make sure that the materials you're putting into the reuse system healthy enough to do so. I mean, we've all experienced on the other side of it where like you want to reuse a material, but it's hazardous or in some way or another, in which case you really can't reuse it. You wouldn't want anyone to reuse it. So then, you realize in those moments that there's something fundamentally wrong with the product as it's designed, right? So it's then that light bulb moment. You're like, okay, well, let's start at the beginning with this particular product. Let's find a way to redesign it.
First principles, and I love it. Just to keep those materials in use. All right, so let's pretend you had a crystal ball, Lauren. What's next? What are you reading up on? What are you excited in this green building movement?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that electrification is really hot right now. I'm sure you're experiencing that too, Charlie, in ways that I haven't seen in my career before. And I think that's really exciting. I think Google certainly focused on that. Again, our Bayview development has a huge all-electric kitchen, and it's our largest now. It's our first in the Bay Area and our largest in the world now for Google's portfolio. And we are looking, we want to electrify our spaces across our portfolio. And so I see that. I see lots of conversations about electrification. I think that's really important to get to, for Google, our 24/7 carbon-free energy goal by 2030. I also think, again, that we want to stay focused on this idea of how interconnected everything is. So we don't want to, and I think sustainability professionals are really smart and experienced at this, but we don't want to lose sight of the other elements, like we've talked about: circularity, health materials, ecology, biodiversity, water, all these different components of sustainability. That's the challenge and the honor of this kind of role. But say, keep your eye on the prize. We're focused on carbon, focused on electrification, but constantly hold all the trade-offs in your head and work to navigate those as you go. So I think that's going to be a big push, a big focus in the coming years for sure.
100%. In California, right, you have mandates to convert some buildings to all electric. And, for the first time in a long time, we're seeing energy modeling needed for existing buildings. And it's like, hey, how can we shift this over and go all electric even on existing facilities? So to your point, it probably helps that you get to test it there first where, you're based, and then you get to roll it out to the portfolio. Here's what worked, here's what didn't, and some of those mandates. And it's one thing for operating carbon and efficiency, another thing for embodied carbon. You said materials, healthy materials. And it sounds like you're at a kind of company that you can look at it all. It's not just one or two parts of the sustainability spectrum. It sounds like you're privileged you get to look at it all. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And embodied carbon absolutely is a key part of it. And then to speak to sort of what you're saying, and that one, I love embodied carbon because it intersects quickly with circularity. I mean, so material reuse helps with circularity or, waste reduction goals. It also helps with reducing your embodied carbon footprint. Again, they're all interconnected. Google's starting to really work towards mass timber construction, which helps with embodied carbon. And then we also want to make sure that the wood is sourced responsibly. So again, you keep going after it, all the different components of sustainability.
So you're still very excited about it and finish up those long-term projects. And hey, what's next? So let's get to know you a little bit more here, Lauren. Just maybe some rapid fire questions. What would you say is your specialty or gift?
Yeah, I think my gift, I'm a great connector of people. So when I hear something going on, kind of connecting the dots, bring people together. I'm also a really hard worker. And I realize that just continues to pay off. I continue to kind of, from my early days, keep working to learn, challenging yourself. And so, yeah, I think that's the sort of those two components that are really,
Give us a pro tip on being a good connector. Do you do an email introduction and say, hey, I know you both, trust me, meet? Or do you give a kind of a summary on why they should meet? Give us a pro tip on how you like to connect two people.
Yeah, it really depends. And I will say it is hard over the last couple of years with COVID, right? Yeah, right. For everybody, especially younger folks starting off in their career. But I've done everything. I feel like I connect people. I do a lot of conversations with folks starting off in their career and kind of talking through my career, sort of similar to this podcast. And then I see opportunities to connect them with someone else, via an email. I think absolutely if you can shine a light on that person and build them up through your email and kind of give everybody a spotlight into what makes them special through that introduction. That's a wonderful thing to do, and just show excitement, between the two different parties. But you never know, right? And I feel like you never know where those conversations will go. And it's a beautiful thing to sort of see something start and then how it could manifest into the future. And it's a small world, like our green building world. And so it's sort of a family. I feel like we're all in this together, and we're continuing to connect with each other over the years.
I love it. And that encouragement with the introduction. Thank you. Do you have any good habits or routines or rituals?
So with 2 young kids, I don't, it's a little crazy every day, but I guess my happy place, like one thing I do that I love to do is when I have a minute to do it is I go on runs or jogs really out and around my neighborhood, but there's some places where you can kind of feel like you're getting out more into nature fairly quickly. And they're on the longer side for me. And I listen to I listen to podcasts. Actually, I love podcasts. So again, honored to be on this one. And so I listen to podcasts, and I sort of just the fact of moving through nature and taking in information, I feel like I learn a lot, and I come back where my brain and my body are feeling energized and learning. So I try to create some routine around that if at all possible.
That's really
for
cool.
myself. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for giving a peek into your world there. That's great. I'm a fan of the bucket list. Are there 1 or 2 things on your bucket list?
Yeah. Well, so funny enough, one of the things that was on my bucket list was, so again, I'm in the home I grew up in, and I've been renovating it. So that was kind of a bucket list to kind of help electrify our home. We've all electric kitchen in our own home. That was on my bucket list, and all this stuff. But then my backyard, which again, I mentioned, I spent a lot of time in as a kid and really felt connected with. So trying to make that a special place for my kids. So that was on my bucket list, is to finish that up. And that's wrapping up just about now. So that was definitely on my bucket list. But yeah, I mean, that's the key one. And I think these projects have been on my bucket list that I've been working on. So I'm proud of those too. I think long term, it'd be great to get out into the world more. I haven't had a chance to really do that with COVID, but travel more with my children and show them some of the things that get me excited. Bring them into Yosemite National Park would be an amazing bucket list item. Yeah.
Oh, those are all so great. And I love how you've weaved in some sustainability to it, and that's fantastic. Let's talk about books and maybe podcasts. Is there a book for the listeners here you'd recommend? And it doesn't even have to be about green buildings. And then since you do go on those jogs, maybe a podcast you'd recommend.
Yeah, that's great. So one of my all-time favorite books is Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. So my mom's family is originally from Oklahoma. And my grandma, who actually lived with me in this home growing up, often shared stories with me about the Great Depression in Oklahoma, and thinking lately about sort of the implications of the environmental destruction back then and sort of what we're facing and thinking about now. So that's like an oldie but goodie for me. I also have, and I know our listeners can't see it, but Impact Networks by David Ehrlichman. And this is something that our team's been reading to think about kind of how we connect different networks within Google for sustainability and do it in a thoughtful way, in a way that helps us ensure we, hold different dynamic tensions between, prioritize connection, kind of thinking about some of the things we've been talking about together on this podcast. In terms of podcasts specifically, I listen to Ezra Klein's podcast a lot. I also just any kind of like on NPR, I will tune into. And then, like anything comedy related to is going to be good to mix it up. So if you have any recommendations there.
No, those are great. Not on the comedy side, but you're right. It's so important just to laugh, be a little more lighthearted. Sometimes it's so serious. And So no, thank you for the book recommendations. We'll put a link to those in the podcast show notes and also a couple of the podcasts. So thank you. That was awesome. Just kind of two more questions here. One is, if you look back on your career, is there any career advice, Lauren, you wish you'd have known a little earlier?
Yeah, I would say, so I have a lot of these conversations with folks. I think like there are kind of two things I would say when you're starting off to think about. I would say have one skill that you're really good at, sort of that's really easy to deliver on something of immediate value to a company. This could be something like AutoCAD or drawing skills or research and memo writing or whatever it is, presentation deliverables, something useful, great, because there's like that practical element. But I also would say, even at the earliest points of your career, have an opinion that's yours, that you feel in your heart is true about whatever topics you're passionate about, and hold that strongly and continue to have curiosity and learn, but bring that to the table, even though you may feel that others in the room know more and that you're missing out and that you wish you would ever, know that you have talent, you have good instincts, and make sure you feel like you can share your voice, particularly for young women. I would say that that's really important to have that, to hold that, and to bring that forward. And I just keep having curiosity and exploration through your career. I think that's super important. I still feel that that's a key component to my career so many years later, is to keep asking questions, keep learning, keep reading, keep challenging the status quo, and you'll be in great shape if you do that.
Wow. A lot of nuggets of wisdom in there. And then kind of building on that, just any final comments here. Let's say someone's listening to this podcast. They're getting super inspired by your story, and they're just now jumping into this green building movement. It's been good to you. It's been good to me. And any words of encouragement to them?
I'd say just get started. Jump in. Join us. It's the best job you could ever have in the world. We need you. We need more people in this field, no matter what your experience, your background, your passion. We need all of it. There are so many different angles to this. So jump in, find some topic that sparks something for you, whether it could be anything. It could be around biodiversity. It could be about electrification. Whatever it happens to be, take that with your own background, your own experience, your own family upbringing, and bring your passion and story forward. Just go for it. We're excited to have you join us.
Go for it. I'm excited too. And, Lauren, this has been very special. You are an inspiration. And so thank you for being on the podcast today. We'll connect your LinkedIn profile. Anyone listening, reach out to Lauren. Let her know what you thought of the podcast. But Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie. Great job with this.
I just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners. We actually are celebrating over 1 year here on the Green Building Matters podcast. Me and the entire team were stoked and just so glad you continue to listen every Wednesday morning to a new interview with a green building professional here in this industry, or just some pro tips that we want to make sure that you are getting straight from us, straight to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.